why would Israel care to recognize some breakaway region as a sovereign nation? Well, for starters, Somaliland is close to the Gulf of Aden, the entry point into the Red Sea, which leads up to the Suez Canal. This gulf is one of the crucial linchpins supplying the West with international trade coming out of India and China overseas. Apparently funded by the United Arab Emirates, Israel is already building military bases in Somaliland. The U.S. has bases in neighboring Djibouti. The location near the Gulf of Aden appears only extra crucial vis-a-vis the incessant attacks coming out of Yemen across the Gulf, where the Houthi rebels have been using Iranian or even Chinese-backed drone systems to attack the U.S. Navy's, Israel's, and NATO's vessels. The cheap rebel drones have been wreaking a ton of havoc and have also made the West lose some face, since its super advanced systems are no match against the primitive sticks and stones being thrown at it. But one does not simply acquire a piece of land the size of a country, not without war or without bribery. To secure Somaliland in the ever-complexifying geopolitical struggle for Western dominance, Israel and its greatest ally, the USA, if not Britain, would have to have offered the Somali elites something of value. And that's how I made the connection to the Somali fraud cases in Minnesota. Wait, did Obama really send Somalis to Minnesota in 2014? Yes, he did. The problem was neither the USA nor Israel could be seen bribing Somali elites to give up Somaliland. So I think the whole migration of people to Minnesota served as a payment scheme, perhaps a rental scheme. The people who would later commit massive fraud against U.S. authorities were being shipped in under Obama, but this doesn't let Trump off the hook. Trump, the narcissist, is more concerned about winning his Nobel Peace Prize, which Israel's Netanyahu personally promised him to get. Trump seems controlled by Israeli interests, you'd think. What I find hilarious, though, is that the U.S. ruling circles chose to do a fraud scheme to the benefit of terrorist organizations such as Al-Shabaab in Somalia. Why didn't they just give the Somali leaders some theme parks, landmarks, or skyscrapers? I guess that too much of U.S. real estate has already been promised to Arabs, Russians, and Chinese investors. They're running out of options to bribe foreign partners unless they start taking the money directly out of the social services coffers. Yes, in short, I believe the Somalis that Obama brought in were henchmen. And I believe these henchmen were given free rein by both Washington, D.C. and the FBI to commit fraud. And no, I don't think the FBI Director Kash Patel is going to do anything about it, because the FBI isn't investigating the fraud. The FBI is organizing it. So that's that guy's theory. Now, I can't vouch for the veracity of his theory or any of these theories. But it certainly is interesting. There's definitely a connection between the fraud of Somalian people in Minnesota with Israel recognizing Somaliland and wanting to get the Palestinians to Somalia. There's definitely a connection. There's definitely a connection. Okay, so I mean, everybody has seen Nick Shirley's reporting on the unbelievable fraud happening through daycare centers in Somalians in Minnesota. It's got over 100 million views on his report, and he's been boosted by everybody. And James Lee is here to tell you there's another side to this story about Nick Shirley, and let's listen.
So it turns out one of the most viral stories of 2025 about the Somali daycare fraud in Minnesota ends up being a complete psyop. Because evidently, Israeli reporters are now asserting that Mossad and Israeli intelligence, not U.S. authorities, were responsible for exposing the Somalian-ran Minnesota fraud operations.
How is Israeli Mossad related to the recent corruption that was discovered in Minnesota? You're not going to believe it, but there actually is a substantial connection, and it runs through the Israeli Prime Minister office. Let's start from the end. Israel just established relationships with Somaliland, which is not Somalia.
And what does that mean? Let's take a listen.
Does anyone know what Somaliland is, really? Said U.S. President Donald Trump after Israel became the first country in the world to recognize the self-proclaimed republic in Eastern Africa. Somaliland is a small territory in the Horn of Africa that broke off from Somalia in 1991. So why does Somaliland even matter? It sits in the Gulf of Aden, one of the world's most important shipports. There's also a Gaza-related angle. Earlier this year, it was reported that the U.S. and Israel have explored Somaliland as a potential destination for displaced Palestinians from Gaza.
$9 billion, that's a whole lot of fraud compared to, what was it? Nick Shirley talked about $110 million, $9 billion. We're talking about a small fraction, but focusing specifically on the Somali community. And then you have the amplification of this story, which isn't necessarily organic, right? You have people like Elon Musk, Vice President J.D. Vance, Attorney General Pam Bondi, all amplifying this story. I'm not discounting that the fraud exists within the Somali community, but is the focus, is the amplification making us feel a certain way, or trying to make us feel a certain way about the Somali community? That's the question. Now, according to Somali intelligence, Somaliland has accepted 3 Israeli conditions in exchange for Israeli recognition. One is the resettlement of Palestinians. 2, the establishment of an Israeli military base on the coast of the Gulf of Aden. And Somaliland joining the Abraham Accords. Well, isn't that a lovely and convenient development for the state of Israel? That they get somewhere to dump the Palestinians. They also gain a critical and strategic military base, and they create an ally in the region that did not exist before. So maybe they get a resident independent journalist who maybe isn't so independent, if you read what this story is all about.
Well,
to do a story that says Somalians bad.
well, it certainly seems fishy. And James is on it, and as we reported in the other video, that the Somaliland is real. All those things are really happening. And I think if you take the Nick Shirley story at face value, you are doing exactly what they want you to do. That, but again, this story was reported, has been reported several times about this daycare scandal. It was reported as far back as 2013, but it was also reported. Can you look into? I'm almost positive Project Veritas.
I couldn't find it relevant yet.
I'm almost positive that Project Veritas in 2020 exposed the scandal of fraud in Minnesota. So great jobs by James Lee. Everybody check him out at 5149, his website. Don't get caught up in a psyop.
You're correct.
I am correct. What? Tell me.
Well, this is one thing that they said. You know what? Let me keep reading. The video is reported to show a cash for ballot scheme and illegal ballot harvesting, collecting and submitting mail-in ballots within the Somali community. No, that's what they
That's
reported
different.
on. Yeah,
That's different.
that's one thing that they reported on.
All right. No problem. So, great work by James Lee. Don't buy it. Don't fall for the psyop. Don't fall for the trap. Is there fraud happening in Minnesota? Oh, yes, there is. Who is behind it? And why would they choose to amplify this now? Those are the questions you need to be asking yourself, so you don't get suckered into another deep state Israel psyop. So keep your head up, keep your eyes open, keep your head up, and don't get sucked in. You guys find anything?
Still looking.
Find anything?
You'll probably find it faster.
Okay. And who made that report? Okay. Yeah. So again, this isn't this idea of this daycare scams happening have been reported on. This isn't the first time. Why all of a sudden now is everybody up in arms about it? Why all of a sudden now is this? You get everybody amplifying this report. Why all of a sudden now? Well,